Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Murphy, members of the committee. It's great to be here before you. We'll be brief. You know, it's funny, Representative Wallace, the last, Worrell, sorry. Last time I talked to him, he said Waltham was God's country. So, anyway, I'm here. I co-filed 1240 House 1247 with Chairperson Garabedian, and I'm going to be here to talk briefly. And we have Waltham Police Officer Mike Marr. So it's become a big problem. There's been at least 20. By the way, I'm chair of the Elder Affairs Committee, and it's mostly our seniors that are being scammed in this area. So, you know, over 20 people, at least in Waltham, have been victimized, amounting to $175,000. The FBI Internet Crime Center report of 2024 received 11,000 complaints nationwide, up 99%. And the amount lost was $246,000 million. And even more goes unreported because people are embarrassed, so they don't want to lose their financial independence. So we have an aging population. I'm sure we're all aware of it. By 2030, it's going to grow by 25%. It just means more victims that are out there. And I'm going to refrain from saying a lot about a particular incidents because I think Officer Marr will do that. But I'll just say that the bill would require all cryptocurrency kiosks to be registered at the Commonwealth, impose daily transaction limits to prevent losing large amounts of money, posting fraudulent activity warnings on kiosks, and require full refunds to consumers affected by fraudulent transactions, require kiosks to print physical receipts for every transaction to assist law enforcement in tracking fraudulent transactions. So that Massachusetts does not regulate this, no oversight, and the City of Waltham just passed an ordinance to ban kiosks because of this, because of the lack of oversight, and I hope the matter is reported out favorably.
Good morning. My name is Michael Marr. I'm a detective with the Waltham Police, and I am one of two detectives currently doing cryptocurrency investigations for the City of Waltham. Approximately 3 years ago, we began to see an increase in fraud reports involving cryptocurrency, and many, though not all, of the victims were elderly. A common theme in these cases is the involvement of a quasi-authority figure who attempts to, quote-unquote, help the victim, often claiming that the account that they're calling about has been, quote-unquote, hacked. The fraudster creates a sense of urgency, instructing the victim to act immediately, typically asking them to keep quiet about this hack while they are directed to withdraw funds and then send the money somewhere. The fraudsters may pretend to be from law enforcement, from the federal government, or from a trusted company such as Apple or PayPal. Recently, we have seen more and more cases where the victims are directed to make these payments or to save their funds in government wallets using cryptocurrency kiosks. In the past, they might have been directed to send the cash in the mail, or they might have been directed to purchase gift cards, but now we're seeing these kiosks. They're very easy to use. I've tested them myself to purchase Bitcoin, and the fraudsters often keep the victim on the phone throughout the process, guiding them in setting up the account and in sending the money onward. The transactions move quickly and can be difficult to trace. Once the victim follows the prompts on the kiosk to set up an account, they're usually given a QR code by the scammer, which is a Bitcoin address or a cryptocurrency address. They scan that in the machine, and when they deposit the funds, they're sent to the address that is controlled by the fraudster. They often move through several addresses and then to an exchange where they're exchanged for fiat currency. In 2025, so far, we've had at least 11 reports of fraud involving cryptocurrency kiosks. And while we have recently banned these machines in the city, we do have victims from Waltham that are directed to other cities and towns to use the kiosks there. Regulations like those proposed by Representative Stanley and Representative Lipper-Garabedian would, I believe, help to reduce this type of fraud, particularly the imposition of daily limits. If the victims can go in there and put in 10 grand at one time, that's a significant loss for these people. If they're limited to, $1,200 or $1,500, the imposition of time, when the fraudster would direct them to a second machine, may give them time to think about what they're actually doing, and it may stop the financial loss that they're experiencing. I also support the posting of visible notices, warning of fraudulent activities by these machines, and the printing out of the receipts. The receipts help law enforcement track the funds because it will show the address that the funds were sent to. We can then use cryptocurrency tracing software to see where the funds went when they went to the bad guy, or the fraudster, I should say. And while these regulations will not stop the fraud entirely, it will help limit the financial damage that many of these victims face. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective. Thank you, Representative. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Detective. I was a little confused. You mentioned the 1,200 to 1,500 per day or per machine. That's my question. Would it be restricted on cryptocurrency per machine or per day?
I think that it would probably be, I'll let the representative speak about that.
I don't believe the legislation specifies the amount.
Well, the amount is arbitrary, but it's
Right.
just whether they can continue to build up the amount by going machine to machine within a day or 24 hours.
Well, that would help, hopefully give the person, time to think this isn't normal as well. But I can get you the answer to the question.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, members of the committee? Just one question, Detective. You had mentioned that, you would support some sort of disclosure signage, right? Just so it gives people a second to kind of pause and think it's
Yes,
safe.
sir.
Has there been any intervention by the locations where these machines are hosted? Are people trained, somebody at a bodega or at a corner store, they have this kiosk there. Do they know what to look for? If somebody comes in on the phone, looks like they probably wouldn't normally be buying, Ethereum, and all of a sudden they're there throwing in $5,000 in cash.
I can't speak to all of the locations. I do know that I spoke to one location in particular, and my understanding is that the cryptocurrency machines rent out the space in the store, and the people that run the front of the store or do the checkout don't really have much to do with it. When I have asked questions of some of the clerks, they would say, yes, I do see a lot of elderly people using that machine. And, they just kind of let them do what they're doing.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Chair Murphy?
Thank you. Chairman Stanley, thanks for your work on behalf of your committee. Detective, I was just wondering, success rate of recovering any type of money, is there any chance of recovering money once it's gone?
A couple of factors go into it. If there's a delay in reporting, that's not useful to us because the money moves very quickly. I think out of this maybe 60 cases that I've worked on in the past couple of years, we've recovered a portion of funds in maybe 4.
And the DA's office, and I'll ask the DAs when they get up here, but do you find that there's any expertise in the DA's office in the district court when you bring cases to the district court? I'm a former assistant DA in Suffolk County. I just wonder, when you bring these cases to the district court, are the DA's office equipped for this at this point?
I think that it's still pretty much the Wild West with this kind of thing. I've had some success with Middlesex DA and Superior Court with getting a court order recently. But it's difficult because there's not a lot of regulation, and a lot of states are struggling to deal with this problem.
Right. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the panel? Seeing none, thank you both for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you,
morning.
Chair Feeney, Chair Murphy. For the record, the three of us have known each other for quite a while. District Attorney Paul Tucker and I attended the FBI Academy together in 1998, the 189th session, and we resided there for 3 months together and became chiefs at the same year. And we've known each other a long time. And Peter and I go way back, because my wife and her family are very involved in law enforcement on the Middlesex County side, where the sheriff has spent an inordinate amount of his career on protecting citizens of the Commonwealth.
Wow.
So I am the junior person here, so I'm going to say the least. I thank you all, thank you the committee, to my colleague, Representative Worrell. Every time he announces that he's from God's country, my father smiles from heaven, who was originally from Dorchester and was so proud of it in life. So, good morning. The one thing that I will say, that from my prior career of nearly 4 decades in law enforcement, is we sit here today, somewhere in this Commonwealth, a detective or a police officer or a COA director or someone is taking a report from a victim, a senior, who has been somehow victimized in a flim-flam of this type. To perpetrate any crime on the Commonwealth requires two elements: desire and opportunity. It's very hard for any of us to take the desire away from someone who wants to put the time and effort in to perpetrate a crime of any type. This bill, however, allows you to eliminate the possibility for that opportunity to happen. One of the things and I've sat with many, many victims in my professional career, as both the gentlemen to my right have, it's a devastating thing to them when they get to that point in life where somehow someone approaches them and perpetrates a plan that seems legitimate, whether it's urgency or however that they devise the scheme, that they then carry it out, and when they 8 to 10 hours or 24 hours later, they realize they've been seriously scammed, sometimes to the detriment that it will affect their life permanently. And it's very difficult to get this back. So I thank you for hearing us on this. I hand it over to Sheriff Katulian and to DA Tucker, and thank you for hearing us on this bill.
Thank you, Rep.
Thank you, Representative. And I don't think you could say it any better. At this very moment, someone is being scammed. At this very moment, there's no doubt that someone is being scammed. And the opportunity for that, we can help reduce through thoughtful legislation. I just want to say thank you to you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman, and it was a great honor to serve with you on this committee, Jamie, and it's great to see you flourishing and leading this committee as well. And to those members of the committee and those that are on virtually, thank you for listening. I stand beside two great leaders, in former Chief and State Representative Wells and former State Rep, Chief and then State Representative and now DA Tucker, in support of House Bill 1247, an act relative to preventing fraud and establishing regulations on certain virtual currencies, sponsored by State Representative Kate Lipper-Garabedian, and co-sponsored by Representative John Lawn, and Senate Bill 707, an act relative to preventing fraud and establishing regulations on certain virtual currencies, sponsored by Senator Cronin. These bills enhance consumer protection and prevent fraud, requiring that warnings be placed on cryptocurrency ATMs and kiosks, alerting users how frequently these emerging technologies are being used in scams. This is a small but very meaningful and important way that we can stop this from happening, and I'll explain in just a moment why. I appreciate the committee and the advocates like AARP for bringing attention to this, to public safety, as we have been experiencing it in reports of fraud and scams every single day. Jen Benson and her team have made this a priority, and I know that you will hear from Dennis Hohengasser about the personal toll these scams can take, and think that they're happening to every one of our constituents every single day. The truth is that he is not alone. We are seeing a surge in these scams nationally, according to the FBI's Internet Criminal Complaint Center, called the IC3. 70,000 Americans reported losing $5.6 billion to crypto scams in 2023, only to crypto scams, with the elderly making up the largest number of reports, totaling 16,000. Now, let's be clear that the elderly are not necessarily more vulnerable, but they are more targeted, right? As a group, they were robbed of $1.6 billion, and so many of these would be have modest means to begin with. So this is an important, devastating loss to them. In 2024, the IC3 received more than almost 11,000 complaints specifically reporting the use of these kiosks, with reported victims' losses of $247 million, and this is a 99% increase in the number of complaints and a 31% increase in reported victims' losses from 2023. We have two recent examples of crypto scams with Middlesex Sheriff's Office as well, among many, by the way, but two that I'll just mention. They use the names of MSO officers. This has been going on for a long time. I see Representative Wells nodding because this has been going on for a long time, using the employees of the sheriff's offices so that if the person calls the office, they find out that there is a real employee, a deputy by that name, and will be more likely to hand over the money, right, because they don't want to have that trouble. And they also spoof our telephone numbers so that the number looks like it's the real sheriff's office telephone number. urging unwitting victims to use cryptocurrency machines to pay bogus fees. In both instances, they kept these victims on the phone for hours, harassing them and threatening them and scaring them. One individual sadly lost almost $3,000 before contacting us to determine if the call was real, and we had told him that it was. The deputy did work for us at one point, but had since passed away some years ago. These, by the way, should be considered, they used to be at Western Unions. And at least there you had a person that sometimes could say, "Are you sure?" Because they would have seen the person come in once or twice before. It's not really a business to say you shouldn't do this, but if they see something wrong, at least there was a person there. Then they moved to the green dots. You could get at any convenience stores. This is what happened with our reports to our office all the time. Now they're moving to crypto, which is even more insidious and quicker, and there's really no recourse whatsoever once they are taken. When I was chair of the Joint Committee on Financial Services with Rep. Murphy, we dealt with a number of consumer protection issues like this all the time. Back then it involved ATMs and bank fraud. We worked to craft legislation addressing ATM features and security, and that was fair to the industry and also had protections for consumers. As sheriff, I remain heavily invested in the efforts to protect our residents from financial scams, especially those targeting some of our own most vulnerable neighbors and friends and colleagues. The Middlesex Sheriff's Office has long been developing presentations on scam awareness and prevention to communities all across our county. We've done hundreds of these over the years, and we still can't keep up with the need to address this at a higher level. Most often, in part with local law enforcement. However, despite our best efforts, crypto fraud is a growing, insidious problem that will not go away without thoughtful and consistent statewide regulation and consumer protections and leadership from your body. Again, I want to say thank you to the committee and look forward to remaining in touch as you continue to work through the session and being of assistance in any way I can.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks, Sheriff. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning to the chairs and the members. I appreciate the opportunity to help try to frame the issues here and offer some common sense solutions. Thank you to our AARP organization. The problem is we have highly sophisticated scammers, often based offshore. They'll phone somebody in Massachusetts, they'll reach out to them, they'll try a variety of different scams, whether it be tech support, law enforcement impersonation, romance scams, the whole gamut is as wide as the imagination can be. The Federal Trade Commission has dubbed these kiosks a payment portal for scammers. There's an ease of use, there's a familiarity. We all use ATMs, and that might give people some comfort that they think that this is legitimate. The issue is, once that transaction takes place, it's instantaneous and irreversible. Once it's sent, there's no clawback. The only hope is that if law enforcement, and we heard from the Waltham detective, gets on it quickly enough, there's a small window of opportunity to try to save that person from being scammed. Take a look at the extremely high transaction fees, some as high as 20 to 50%, and it's cloaked in a smaller transaction fee of about 3% to make it look like it's legitimate. And it's not until after it takes place that the person who's been scammed has seen that it was a much, much higher fee. The folks that are being preyed upon are unsophisticated. They don't know, mostly elderly folks, some that have computers, some that are reached by phone. Another issue is the anonymity. We don't really even know much about these owners. Their information is generally unavailable to law enforcement. There's no central registry. You heard before it's the Wild West of scams, and that's certainly true. We estimate that in Massachusetts, there is somewhere between 650 and 800 of these ATM kiosks in Massachusetts. We spoke with a police chief from outside of Essex County, and he said that there wasn't any of these crypto kiosks in his community. An internet search showed there was 8 of them, some of them right downtown. They didn't even know it. These scammers use spoofed numbers. We've had victims that looked up and Googled the numbers that they're asked to call. One of them showed up, FBI Atlanta. It looked like it was legit, spoofed number. One of our victims was said to call the number on the back of her own credit card, spoofed number. People get some familiarity with this. They think that it's okay, not realizing that they're being scammed. We've had so many anecdotal cases, and I just want to highlight a few. I think it's worth the time. We had a 64-year-old retired teacher from Merrimack, Mass. Received a virus alert on his computer. She was told to download the app, told her what number to call, physically on the back of her own credit card. It was all a scam. She lost $21,800 as the scammer coached her, doing exactly what she was told to do. She took the money out of her bank account, went to a Bitcoin machine, fed it into the crypto kiosk. A 40-year-old Beverly man who's been working with us received a call from somebody that claimed to be a border control agent, said that he was a suspect in smuggling. He ended up calling the FBI number in Atlanta, spoofed number. He lost $17,500. A 90-year-old Danvers man, 90 years old, received a message on his computer that he owed $400. They then reached back to him and said they mistakenly put $40,000 in his account. He looked at his account. It appeared there was $40,000 in it. It had been manipulated by the scammers. He ended up losing $22,000. He fed into the machine $100 at a time into one of these machines to the tune of $22,000. Our office in Essex County were able to trace it back to a Hong Kong-based crypto exchange company. We were unable to get that person's money back. So far in Essex County alone, we've investigated 26 of these scams, most of them targeting the elderly. These investigations are labor-intensive, and very, very rarely are we successful. It's our position in Essex County that the warnings on these ATMs are ineffective. The sheriff referenced the IC3 Internet Complaint Center. We work closely with them. We've watched from 2021 to calendar year 24, triple the complaints and the losses from $27 million last year, over $200 million in Massachusetts. If you take a look at all of these, and we look at the numbers of 2025 that we'll have at the end of the year, it's no secret these numbers will be even higher. They're vastly underreported. We know the shame and the embarrassment, particularly with elderly folks, the absence of a central reporting mechanism. We don't know how big a problem this is. What we do know is the numbers that we have, it's even bigger than that. Instructive, I think, for the committee when we think about this is the experience in Iowa. Their numbers, the Attorney General in Iowa found that 98% of the reports using this Bitcoin depot were scams, and when it came to coin flip, 94.9% were scams. That's the finding of the Iowa Attorney General. We have a lot of difficulties in tracing this blockchain, this issue of barriers called mixing and tumbling, where they move these very quickly through these wallets, making it almost impossible to trace them down. The AARP bill, and I'll finish with this, it's common sense, and I think it will have the effect immediately of protecting these vulnerable folks. If you take a look at the states right now, California, New York, Vermont, Minnesota, Rhode Island have put these in place, they've seen immediate results. We call it a speed bump for scammers to slow them down. What's it look like? Require some consumer disclosures and warnings, create anti-fraud measures, full refunds for customers. I think Chairman Feeney asked, or maybe Representative Howard asked about the limits. We suggest $1,000 per day per customer. Chairman Feeney also raised a very good point. What's happening in these stores? Is anybody actually intervening? We've had clerks that went over to elderly people, watching them with a stack of $100 bills, feeding them one after another into a machine. I personally spoke with a woman from Salem, a law school grad, a 30-year state employee, who said that she was in a gas station in Salem, feeding $13,000 into that machine, and she kept saying to herself, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is right. But the scammer had her on the phone and persuaded her. These are the folks that are losing. We also asked that a special commission be set up concerning the blockchain technology. I think that a lot of really smart people could get together and make a difference. We are losing a lot of money, and there's nothing like sitting across from someone who's lost their life savings. I'll finish with this. We had two people from Beverly, 85 years old. I saw them in my office, both in tears. Their entire life savings was gone. These are the folks that we're trying to protect. And I appreciate all of your time. I know you'll give this a good effort, and we really appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, District Attorney. Was Jessica going to join? No. No, you're good? Okay. Got it, thank you. Any questions, comments from members of the committee? Representative Howe?
Well, we have an all-star cast here, so welcome today. Oh, they turn it on. I do know, changing gears a little bit, for example, in some of my towns, if someone wants a pinball machine, for example, they have to go before the town to get a license, and each pinball machine has a fee. I don't know whether ATMs or these types of Bitcoin machines require a license to be put into a store. I would think it would be more on a local level, but at least there would be some amount of control and people would know where they are. So I just wanted your thoughts on that. Thank you.
I think part of the problem, Rep. Howard, is that there are no regulations. In fact, my office, we've reached out to Department of Revenue, Department of Insurance, the Banking Commission, and they all agree something needs to be done. There is nothing out there. The fact that in that town just outside of Essex County, the police chief said we don't have any. The fact is they had 8 of them. So there is no regulation at all.
So I don't know, as you were asking the question, Representative, I can't recall if there was some municipalities considering ordinances on this. You guys probably will know this through your research, whether that can be done. I do remember when chairing this committee with Representative Murphy that it was really frustrating because oftentimes we wanted to do something state-driven, but the federal rules applied to the federal entities. We could manage the state banks, but we couldn't do anything with regard to the federal banks, and I don't know where that lies with crypto. But my recollection is there were some local ordinances that were addressing this matter, and that can be a stopgap for the time being for certain communities, but there's going to be people that can go over those lines to other communities to have access to those very same technologies and machines.
Representative Lippick-Arabinian.
Just for the purposes of conversation, the bill does include a reference to licensure and requiring that operators of the kiosks be licensed in the state as money transmitters. And then the special commission that DA Tucker mentioned would also look into the relevance of further licensure requirements.
Any other questions, comments, or Chief? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up to your point. You know, no one's asking to put these in town halls or city halls or senior centers. They're putting them in places where, as District Attorney Tucker mentioned, the average person wouldn't even know what it was. They walk right by it. You may walk by it. And that's to what I talked about. The desire to perpetrate the crime is so high in this country. This legislation gives us the ability to impact the opportunity to complete that, to make those people victims. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just to follow up one more thing, too. I mean, again, this used to be done through green dot cards. So you could get at your local pharmacy, your convenience stores, go in, deposit cash, get a green dot, then use that technology to give them the money. This is much worse, much quicker, much easier, and much less traceable than even those. And I remember hearing about a few people through Western Union where someone's aunt that I knew who was being scammed. These are all the same scams. It started with the Nigerian prince that was going to give you half of his $20 million he was inheriting, to much more where they preyed upon your hopes. Now they prey upon your fears. These are jury scams, tax scams. Your grandchild is actually in a terrible auto accident or an illness in a different country, and they need the money to pay off the hospital to have them released, or that they are incarcerated, they've been kidnapped and need the money. And I remember this one gentleman whose mom had been scammed once. She went down to Western Union and they recognized her and said, "Are you like they kind of checked with her and then checked with her family." And as he said, if she had actually just called her grandson, who was supposed to be held hostage, that she would have found him at home eating a ham sandwich. It's happening all the time. It's happening to people like us. I mean, Paul mentioned this. This is happening to people just like we think, oh, I wouldn't get scammed. The people just like us. We can all get scammed. And it's a terrible contagion across this country, and so many people are losing hope. And this is only, as Paul said, that's being reported. So much more is not being reported because they're embarrassed to let people know and ashamed that they were stupid enough, as they might consider themselves, to get scammed. That's a terrible thing to bear, I think, along with the loss of your finances.
And Sheriff, my understanding is that on the grandchild scams that we're seeing a lot more of, that generative AI has become pervasive, right? So
Exactly,
now,
right.
even somebody like me, if I get a call from, this is your niece down in Florida, it sounds just like her, right?
Right,
And
right.
that's what they're doing is using AI for their voice. So, yeah, anybody can be scammed. I don't think there shouldn't be a stigma around this. It can happen to anybody. So,
Great.
Chair Murphy. Microphone.
Thank you to the panel. Thanks, Representative Wells, Sheriff Kachugian, Attorney Tucker. Thank you for your work on this. And I want to just read something to you that I received a couple of weeks ago from a constituent in regard to people that can get scammed. It happened to a family member of mine that's pretty sophisticated. They got a call one day that there was a car accident and this person's brother was being held hostage until the payment was made. And this person went down to the bank. This person I know very well was pretty smart. Down to the bank, and the teller said, "What are you doing here?" And it was stopped at that point. Thank God. But we're all getting calls now. I think many of us are receiving calls from constituents, from people that are getting scammed. We got a call a couple of weeks ago from a gentleman in an email. Now, his brother was a victim, but the brother wouldn't call me. He was an older gentleman, embarrassed. So his brother sent me an email. He said, "Dear Representative Murphy, I sit here typing this letter to you, feeling physically ill from a recent scam involving my brother, a resident of Weymouth like myself. He is 70 and fell victim to a scam that caused him to lose his entire life savings, $54,000. It involved a trusted person that was taken advantage of by scammers that eventually convinced him to send them Bitcoin. We've reported this to the Weymouth Police, FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, the FTC, and the Attorney General's office. The scam involved a covered period from March 25th through April 1st. I have looked into cryptocurrency recovery firms, but none of them seem to have any success stories to share. So we don't know where to turn. Is there anything that you can do at this point? If you have any ideas or any suggestions, please let me know. Please make sure this doesn't happen again." And this is just from one of my constituents. I've received a number of these. And so I think today is a very important day where we start to take a step forward to try to fix this. The people that are in this room, law enforcement, AARP, I think we can all come up with some legislation that we can put forward with this committee, hopefully. And I think that we have to make sure, as a body, that this does not continue to happen to people. And I just wonder, and I asked the question earlier, I was an assistant DA before I was a rep, and look at the DA's offices everywhere with the stresses put on them. Now they're faced with very, very sophisticated crimes, and then end up in the district attorney's office. How's the DA's office handle cases like this, or everything else you have going on? And is there federal law enforcement that you're working with to combat this type of crime?
All good points, Mr. Chairman. So yes, particularly in my office, I have Dave O'Sullivan's our Deputy Chief of Appeals, and Scott DeLay's here, our Chief Legal Counsel. We've been working very hard on these. We've had some success working with local detectives, in Haverhill, Merrimack, Beverly. Because they got on it quickly, we had some success. On the issue on the federal side, there's a threshold amount that the feds want to see before they'll get involved. The problem is these scammers are so good, they'll keep it at 10,000, 12,000. We've seen some in the high range, but generally they try to keep it around 10 because they don't want the federal government involved. We have worked with the FBI, we've worked with Secret Service. Again, if it's enough of a case, and it's got to be more than just one victim, so their threshold is pretty high. We continue to really help train our police officers at the municipal level as well to recognize this, and frankly, part of it is a public education campaign to let people know that these things are happening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your work, all of you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we're going to go to Glenn Kaplan from the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. And after this next testifier, we will go to Detective Anthony Lucy.
Thank you, Chair Feeney, Chair Murphy, members of the committee for the opportunity to testify. I'm Glenn Kaplan. I'm Chief of Insurance and Financial Services at the AG's office. I'm here in support of H 1247 and Senate 707, the act relating to crypto kiosks that you've been hearing about. I want to applaud Senator Cronin and Representatives Lippert, Garabedian, and Stanley for filing this important legislation. Look, some of this you've already heard, but I think it bears repeating. There's been an alarming increase in the number of cryptocurrency scams. You've heard the statistics relating to the FBI. I think that it's alarming how quickly things are rising, and here in Massachusetts, what we've seen is reflecting those same trends. It's also true that the criminal activity in these types of cases does disproportionately impact elderly individuals. Again, I'm repeating it, but the FTC has found that 33% of older adults who've lost a significant amount in their scams, so they're in a bucket for purposes of their statistics, identified cryptocurrency as the payment method, and cryptocurrency ATMs, the kiosks, were featured in the majority of those complaints that the FTC looked at. My division in the AG's office works to recoup funds that are lost to crypto scams, but we're limited in terms of the available remedies. We brought dozens of cases, and we've recovered millions of dollars for the victims. I mean, we can often do that, but a lot of the times we can't because the money gets beyond our reach. And that's part of the nature of crypto. It very quickly sort of swims offshore, and unless you are able to get an exchange or a platform you're able to work with who's going to recognize your state court order, that money then is gone, and you're not going to be able to get it back for the people. So the best way to address crypto fraud is to prevent it in the first place. That's got to be a part of the toolkit here. And a good place to start is with the more than 600 crypto kiosks that we have here in the Commonwealth, because they are an entry point. Now, it's imperative that consumers receive clear information relating to these kiosks. It's also important that the machine operators be required to impose common sense safeguards to protect the residents. Now, this proposed legislation that we're talking about right now has some very useful provisions. It puts limits on the daily transaction amounts, requires disclosures for the consumers, requires that the kiosk operators provide refunds in some circumstances, and it requires live customer service, which is also important. Otherwise, you're just standing there with this machine, you're just talking to a big chunk of metal. You want to be able to talk to a person. In addition to what's in the bill, I would like to uplift a few proposals that would strengthen the protections offered in the bill. One, providing some specificity about what the consumer's got to show to be able to or be entitled to get that reimbursement, so that there's no litigation or fighting later with the kiosk companies or anybody else about whether they have to turn that over. Two, making sure that that live customer service line is available all the time that the kiosk is open for business, not just limited hours. And three, potentially thinking about even further lowering the daily transaction limit. Because the other thing to keep in mind is that scammers can have people go not only to additional kiosks of the same company, but to multiple kiosk companies. So you have to figure out a way to keep the overall numbers down and protect the consumers and have them have time to think about what they're doing. Finally, relating to these types of provisions, I would recommend that the bill clarify one thing in its proposed disclosures. I'd recommend, right now it indicates in the bill disclosures that the monies are just not recoverable. And I do want to point out that sometimes losses are recoverable. I mean, as I've said, we've had success in some of our cases. I think you heard from from the police departments and from the DA testifying. There are some levels of successes. You do want to make sure people realize there's a very high risk if they start using these machines that they won't be able to get their money back. My office is available as a resource to work with you and to provide further information. Thanks for the opportunity to testify and for taking me out of turn. We will be submitting written testimony with more detailed information. And one last thing, just to let you know that our office is also submitting written testimony regarding our opposition to H1119 and Senate 725, which is an act relative to financial technology services. This is about the earned wage advance industry. Thank you.
So thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions, comments? Go ahead, Chair Murphy. Yes.
Glenn, thank you for coming over today. So just a comment. I want to thank the AG's office for being a big part of this committee's educational piece. You've been very good to us over the years with advising us on issues, answering our questions, and I want to thank you for your continuation of doing that today. So thank you very much to you and the office. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to echo that. Thank you for working with us on policy issues as we try and understand it in a greater way. We appreciate the team. Just a quick question for you before we let you go. You mentioned, funds being recoverable. Is there any way for law enforcement to, say they, hear about a scam an hour, 2 hours, 12 hours after somebody had deposited the money into the kiosk. Can that be seized if there is an ongoing investigation to say, you know what, we believe this person was scammed, we're going to seize that cash and have access to it for that customer? Is that something that we can do under law now, or no?
Well, what I guess I would say is it ends up being a complicated question because it depends on what the pieces are in the scam, where the money's been routed. Okay. A lot of the times in our cases, we do want to hear about it right away, all right? But sometimes, even if it takes a little bit of time, you can still do something, because when you run the trace, it will pop through all different kinds of wallets and all different kinds of crypto platforms. But as long as it ends up temporarily someplace where that entity will honor a state court order or be subject to jurisdiction in a state court order, you can go all the way out and get it at that platform, even if the platform in some instances is overseas. It just depends on the platform. For law enforcement, oftentimes, and I will defer to the DA and the police departments that are going to be testifying here or did, but a lot of the times they're looking at trying to get the money at the initial spot, right, at the crypto kiosk, as opposed to trying to get it later on in the process when it's gone through the various platforms further down the line.
Different wallets.
Yeah, a lot of our cases are where we're trying to grab it back from the platforms, and we have success from doing that. Yet you have to sue in superior court. You got to get your judgment, but you can do it in some instances. Okay. But with the kiosks, the idea in many instances, I believe, is that they will either use a search warrant or some other mechanism to try to freeze things in place, and then from there, they'll go ahead and, in some instances, they have to go into court, and this is the issue about the district courts that I think somebody mentioned. You've got to get the courts to go ahead then and bless it, or you've got to be able to turn that money back over. The crypto kiosk companies, obviously, in some instances, have a different view of whether they should be able to get that money. Right. But that would be the way you could get it right up front, is if you've got the cash that's relating to the kiosk. But even if you don't have a kiosk involved at all, which is different than the ones we're talking about here, you can sometimes recover it. But the kiosks are important because these are, in many ways, the big gateway and entry point for a lot of these scams. And they're the ones that people feel most comfortable with. So if you get, in some instances, sort of seniors who are perhaps not as savvy about some of the technology, they're going to see these machines. They look like ATMs. It's easier. It's not like having to go in and set up a Coinbase account. In some instances on the crypto kiosk scams, you don't even have to set up an account. Each of these crypto kiosk companies works differently. It may be that the scammer has an account, and they're just on the phone with the scammer's having them enter the scammer's information. So handling these, dealing with this entry point, would save a lot of people from falling victim and stop things before they happen. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in this area, I think.
Understood. Chair Murphy?
Have you found that there's any warnings on any crypto Bitcoin machine? And for instance, if I go to a machine and I'm getting money out, and you say that's the point of entry into someone stealing money, something as simple as a question that might pop up on the screen that say, is someone asking you to take money out? With warnings that will pop up as to, here are the latest scams, think about this before you take the money out. Like, how do you stop it at the entry point?
I will say that these things vary company by company. The different companies that create and have the kiosks, they're all different. And there are some that do have some level of warnings on them, and there is some sort of interaction with information you're supposed to put in. But you have to remember that it's got to, number one, be a strong set of warnings, because in many instances the scammer is on the phone with the victim. And having somebody talking to you is going, in many instances, to help them to avoid or get around whatever those warnings are. Secondly, the bill does other things besides just the warnings. The warnings are a piece of it, but the limits on the number of transactions, the refunds in certain circumstances, I mean, those are also very helpful in making sure that people, don't suffer from getting ripped off.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none? Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we have a panel led by Jennifer Benson. Jen, welcome back. Dennis, I'm going to mess up the last name. Hovengasser? Okay. And Alice Diamond. Thank you for your patience and welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk with you about this. Chair Murphy, Chair Feeney, members of the committee, thank you for your attention to this matter. This is critical, as you've heard from multiple folks before us coming up here. My name's Jennifer Benson. I'm the State Director for AARP Massachusetts, and our reason for filing this legislation is to protect people. I like to call AARP the lobbyists of the people. That's all we do. We fight for people every day. And we know that this impacts the over 50 population here in Massachusetts at a disproportionate level. This issue has come up in multiple states, and we'll get into that through my testimony. So thank you for taking the time. So I'm here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 707, House Bill 1247, as you've heard already today. Millions of Americans are being scammed and defrauded every year, and you can help prevent this by prevent them from losing their hard-earned money. Cryptocurrency ATMs, also known as crypto kiosks or virtual currency kiosks, look like bank ATMs and allow people to conduct legitimate cryptocurrency transactions. However, criminals can also use them to carry out fraudulent activity. According to the FBI, Americans lost $9.3 billion to crypto-related scams in 2024, marking a 66% increase in losses from 2023. I want to highlight the core provisions of the bill, but in a moment you'll hear the compelling testimony from two key AARP volunteers, both of whom will share the reason we need you to take action now. In addition, you have already heard from law enforcement on what they're seeing, what's being reported to them, and how big an issue this is throughout Massachusetts. This legislation would license kiosk operators as money transmitters, register kiosk locations across the Commonwealth, ensure receipts for transactions are given, disclose fees, specific warning disclosures for scams, set a daily transaction limit, and allow full transaction fee refund for all users in the case of fraud, full transaction refund for new customers. That means fee and actual money lost in cases of fraud with a police report, 60 days to file a report, police access to software analytics, creates a special commission to study blockchain technology and determine how Massachusetts can best regulate and benefit from it, ensure Massachusetts residents have access to educational materials to understand these machines better and this technology. I want to call your attention to a couple of key provisions. Fees, if passed into law, the bill would establish limits on the fees charged to consumers. Currently, virtual currency kiosks may charge high transaction fees, and those fees can range anywhere from 7 to 35%. Most are typically around 23% per transaction, plus $3 to $5 mining or validation fees per transaction. Daily transaction limits. Imposing daily transaction limits helps to avoid potential risks associated with higher transactions, and you have already heard people feeding their entire life savings into these machines. Our daily transaction limit is to hope that people will be able to pause, take a moment, think about what they're doing, and then they would have to come back another day to complete if they deemed necessary, but it would give them that, so to speak, pause. To be clear, this legislation would not ban kiosks. Although, you should know that last month, Gloucester and Waltham established bans, and several other cities and towns are considering the same. AARP developed this legislation because it has worked to get it passed across the nation. Because there are no federal regulations, 18 states have taken action and passed laws to protect consumers when using cryptocurrency kiosks, including most in New England. They are Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, many more. So to be clear, again, we are not asking for a ban. We're not here requesting a ban. But that has been a discussion, as you heard, in many municipalities and in many states across the country. I would be remiss if I didn't mention AARP's Fraud Watch Network, which you will hear about. We have many, many resources for people and the public to learn about what scams are happening today, where they are, and to understand the gravity of this situation. This is timely because the numbers are rising rapidly. We know every day, as you heard from the sheriff, that someone is getting scammed today, they'll be scammed tomorrow, and it is more than one a day, I can guarantee you that. We've heard data from other states that are looking at 94 to 98% of the transactions through these machines are fraudulent. Understanding this is under litigation, but the Iowa Attorney General, not exactly a liberal state, I would say, looked into this very deeply. We have a problem. And our neighboring states here in New England, most of them have already passed a version of this legislation, which means that as scammers are contacting their victims, they know enough to send their victims over state lines and use machines in Massachusetts. We don't want to be that state in New England. So I urge you to consider and pass this bill as quickly as possible to prevent future criminal behavior through these means here in Massachusetts and protect consumers. I'm going to turn it over to our volunteer state president for AARP Massachusetts, Dennis Hohengasser.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Murphy, Chair Feeney, and members of the committee, thank you for holding this hearing today. My name is Dennis Hohengasser. I live in Taunton, and I'm a newly appointed volunteer state president for AARP Massachusetts. This past June, a woman from Taunton received a call from Comcast, her internet service provider, stating that her laptop was infected with a virus. To correct the problem, she was given specific instructions on what to do. She was told that to fix the problem, she had to pay $4,300 right away and go to the bank and withdraw that amount. The bank did their due diligence and asked her if she was going on a trip. The scam could have stopped right there, but she did as she was told and lied to the bank and said she was rehabbing her kitchen. Once she had the cash in hand, she was instructed to go to the Truckee's supermarket on Tremont Street and use the Coinstar machine to deposit the money with the code number that they had given her. Once she deposited the money, she realized that she was scammed. She contacted her sister, who related the story to me. Together, they reported the scam to the Taunton Police Department. Shortly after hearing this, I stopped by the supermarket to see the machine myself. It looked unassuming. It was a Coinstar machine with a paper flyer attached that read simply, "Low fees, more crypto." I asked the employee at the service desk if he was unaware that one of their customers was scammed out of $4,300 using this crypto kiosk. His response was, "It's not our machine." I asked him again, "Does it concern you that one of your customers was scammed using this machine?" And again he responded, "It's not our machine." So I went to the corporate office in Raynham for Truckee's Supermarket with the two handouts that we have describing the problem and the legislation. The response from the receptionist was, "Well, maybe you should talk to Coinstar." I said, "But the machine is in your store, and Coinstar is paying you rent to keep this in your store." The receptionist then blamed the victim and said, "How could they be so stupid?" She said that she would pass on the flyers to her manager. I followed that up with another visit to the store, and this time I spoke to the store manager. He was unaware of the scam and had no idea that the machine in his store could be used for that purpose. Again, I gave him the 2 flyers explaining the problem and the legislation. However, as of yesterday, that Coinstar machine with the signs for cryptocurrency were still there. Host locations of these machines and their staff are totally unaware of the dangers they pose to the communities their stores serve. We must ensure that these machines receive the common sense oversight and regulations this legislation proposes. I ask you to report this bill out favorably, and when you do, please ensure it includes provisions that the host locations and their employees are trained to know what these machines can really do, warning signs to look out for, and the steps they can take to reduce the risk to individuals. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dennis.
Good afternoon, Chairs Feeney and Murphy, and other members of the committee. My name is Alice Diamond, and I served as Associate Dean for Career and Community Service at Lesley University before I retired and became a volunteer with AARP. I'm a member of the AARP Massachusetts Speakers Bureau, and I also take calls on the AARP Fraud Watch Helpline. On my weekly shifts, I provide resources to victims. It's both rewarding and heartbreaking to support individuals who often feel alone. Scams impact people from all walks of life. I've had calls from college professors, chief technology officers, and retired executives. While the financial impact of these crimes is significant, the psychological toll of being a victim can be enormous. People say they're humiliated. They don't want to tell anyone what happened for fear of hearing, "I can't believe you fell for this." Victims are blamed for these crimes. Not only have they lost money, but they lose a sense of competence. AARP runs free online victim support groups to help people share their experiences and heal from the devastating impact of these crimes, but often this is not enough. I've had calls from victims who could not pay for groceries or housing after having money stolen by scammers. I spoke with a caller from Massachusetts who was deceived into sending $500,000 in a cryptocurrency investment scam. His life is literally upended. In another call, a 64-year-old woman got a message on her computer from Microsoft. She called the number in the alert and was deceived into giving the scammer control of her computer. The imposter then transferred her to a fraudulent FTC agent who told her to withdraw money from her bank as protection. She deposited $18,000 into a crypto ATM and is now worried about her financial future. Another caller in her early 70s received a text message supposedly from her bank about an issue with her account. She thought she was protecting the money by taking cash out and depositing it in an ATM at her grocery store. Only after she filed a report about it did she learn that she had put the money into a cryptocurrency ATM. Regulating cryptocurrency ATMs will have a significant impact on protecting victims from these criminals. This is just one of many steps we need to take to fight this growing scam epidemic, but one we must take right now. I strongly urge you to report H1247 and S707 out favorably to safeguard the financial security and well-being of Massachusetts residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate the testimony of the AARP, and thank you for what you do on a daily basis for people across the Commonwealth. Any questions, comments, members of the committee? Go ahead, Chair Murphy.
Jen, thank you for your hard work on this issue. We appreciate all your efforts. Look forward to working with you, and thank you to your volunteers for coming in today and testifying. We'll be working with you in the future on this, so thank you very much.
And I'll just say, like, the stories that you told us, it is absurd that the federal government has not figured out a way to capture more of this upstream. When you talk about people taking over, using AnyDesk software and things like that, that we haven't actually regulated that. I mean, we're talking about the actual endpoint of a scam. But, you know, the things that I see, and one of my favorite pastimes is going on and watching scammer payback videos on YouTube to see kind of what the new scams are that are ongoing. It is fascinating and alarming to me that the federal government has not figured this out. You know, we're talking about tariffs against countries, yet we're letting other countries, other jurisdictions just run absolute wild over people in the United States on these scams, and then we're not doing anything about it. So yeah, hopefully that's more of a conversation going forward too, but I appreciate you being here today. Go ahead, Jen, yeah.
Thank you for that comment, and I agree. Often, a lot of these issues are either cross-border of states or countries. The FBI does follow it very closely, but you know, we are kind of the boots on the ground, as you heard earlier from the detective. And you know, when I was sitting where you're sitting today, I know that there are many issues that Massachusetts has had to lead on, has had to regulate, has had to figure out the rules of engagement at a local level because we didn't have the protection from the federal government. So now you're seeing cities and towns here in Massachusetts starting to do the same thing, developing their own rules of engagement on the ground, whether it's a ban or considering what can they do to protect their own constituents. You are in a very difficult situation, and I appreciate that. But I also know, with the history of Massachusetts and the work that this committee has done many times in the past, from bank transfers, wire transfers, a lot of the ways scammers were getting paid have been blunted by the work happening here. And this is now the new technology that's hit the streets and is making it even easier. It's more complex, it's harder to trace, but the effect is the same. And I appreciate your dedication to protecting the residents of Massachusetts in every way you can, and hope that this bill can emerge.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate your testimony. Thanks for being here today.